Breaking news, XRP ETF issuer Sal Gilberti just confirmed JPMorgan is afraid of Ripple and XRP. And during today's episode, we're going to show our community how this year, 2025, JPMorgan went out and lobbied to prevent Ripple from becoming a national bank. With their impending approval on the horizon, we're going to break down the details for Ripple and XRP as they purchase their stake in the future of finance, becoming the first crypto company to become a United States national bank. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Good Evening Crypto, your favorite crypto news related channel. Be sure to stick around for the entire episode as we're going to break down what the next catalyst is for the XRP price chart, as well as the rivalry between Ripple and JPMorgan. And we're going to start right here with these brand new statements out of Sal Gilberti, where he confirms JPMorgan is afraid of Ripple and XRP.
In my mind, is very clear. They are building literally I said it before, a JPMorgan rival. Once they get their banking license, they're going to be incredibly well capitalized. Why would they want to sell XRP? They're going to want to hold on to that. As it goes up in value, they can sell some, clearly, sure. I just think that Ripple is a machine. It is a highly disciplined team that is, they don't all have to agree on things, and some of them leave to go here or go there. They sure all leave and go somewhere related. So whether it's a master plan or more likely it's really creative people that work as a team, and they all have different paths that their lives take them on, but they stay in the ecosystem and they're creating a bigger ecosystem, a more robust ecosystem. I just think Ripple is at the center of the universe. And so Brad says XRP, he's being modest. It's Ripple.
It's Ripple. Well, and I look at it this way. When you think about the adoption curves that we have seen happen in really just 12 months, since last November when Trump's administration took office, the speed in which we have seen movement in the crypto market, we have never seen anything like it in my 10 years of working in this area. And if you look at what's happening now, I want to share this with you. This, of course, is a U.S. state approving the first Bitcoin-backed municipal bond in the U.S. Do you think we could see XRP-backed municipal bonds in the future?
Obviously, no idea. I think Bitcoin obviously is the natural for people if they want to branch out into it. Yeah. I think, look at the volatility. The volatility in Bitcoin is still pretty big, but it is declining rapidly. So to your point, since Trump was elected, we have a crypto-friendly administration, which is completely different than a crypto-antagonistic administration. Even if the Trump administration were neutral, we'd have this immense progress, but they're not neutral. They clearly are crypto-friendly, and that's a wonderful thing. And I think that as more money comes in, as the ETFs comes in, as the treasury companies come in, and you see that supply taken off the market of the XRP tokens, in terms of it's in buy and hold. It doesn't stay off the market forever. People buy and sell it as per their needs. But I think these natural, crypto winter, and people saying it's early Black Friday for crypto last week or a couple of weeks ago, all that is nice stuff and buzz for the internet. But the bottom line is you're up hundreds of percent in a year in terms of asset values here. Yep. A 30 or 50% pullback is literally nothing. It's natural. The markets are maturing. The volatility will strip out. It won't go away completely, and they'll still remain, relatively volatile assets, I think, for quite some time. But as these things are used in the financial world stably, okay, not just for stable coins, but I get that as crypto is used in treasuries to back bonds, things like that, there's no question the whole asset class will become more stable, less volatile, and a more attractive investment for even traditional investors.
And we've been focused on this, Johnny. While most retail investors are calling for the bear market, me and you believe this is a 35% pullback, like Raoul Pal stated, where everyone says it's over and every retail investor calls for a bear market, but it won't be over. And we're going to get our final leg up in the spring of 2026, creating brand new all-time highs for many of our favorite altcoins. We are going through a major collapse on many of our favorite projects, like XRP, for example, down to $1.94. But what did Sal Gilberti say? It's not about today or tomorrow. It's not even about the next 3 to 6 months. It's about what happens throughout the entire Trump administration. And he goes, this administration isn't neutral. They're pro-crypto. And not only are they pro-crypto, they're working hand in hand with Ripple and Brad Garlinghouse in order to bring forward the digital era of finance here inside the United States. If you enjoy this content and you believe that Ripple is a rival to JPMorgan, smash that like button. If you disagree, leave a comment underneath the video. But Johnny, there's one more piece of evidence I wanted to provide. As earlier this year, JPMorgan and 41 other huge banks lobbied against Ripple to receive a federal banking license from the OCC. And these weren't small banks. JPMorgan, Bank of America, Citigroup, Wells Fargo, Morgan Stanley. And why are they afraid of Ripple receiving a banking license? Because they can now offer products cheaper, faster, better, real time, right now. What are some of your thoughts on what Sal had to say?
You know, hard to say where it was, but the reality is we know that at the end of the day, we know there was a relationship. There was a relationship between R3, Quarter, and XRP Ripple with JPMorgan back in 2019, 2020, and then something fell apart. Next thing, all of a sudden, a lawsuit happens. There you go. Put two and two together. Now it makes sense when you listen to what Sal's saying. He's literally telling you, like, look, at the end of the day, these guys are going to become competitors to the entire banking system. Well, that makes sense of why the banking system, why they all those banks there oppose them. They're scared to death of them. I couldn't agree with Sal more. Ripple, I've been saying this for years now. The senior leadership team, I think, is fantastic at Ripple. I think they got a great team. Yeah, they think like bankers. They're going to want to turn the thing into a bank. And here's the thing. Most startup companies, apps, don't get to start with $100 billion in the bank. Right? And these guys are very fortunate that when they launch this company through the means, and we'll call ICO, whatever you want to call it, how they raise the money. I won't call it an ICO because technically they say it isn't. But the point is, they had the ability to raise money through the crypto market, through XRP, to then fund the company that's going to now turn into what we're seeing today. I mean, they're buying companies worth billions of dollars. Startups don't do that, apps. It's not possible. This is not a startup. Ripple is way ahead of the game. It's like, you know, you were born a baby and then you just jumped to 27 years old. You didn't, they skipped the middle part, the hard part, the growth pains part, because they had so much money and they're flush with cash. And so now I truly believe they are putting themselves in a position where they're going to be threatening some of the old guard. So the question is, how, that's the challenge they have in front of them.
And here's something a lot of listeners have forgotten about when it comes to the relationship between Ripple and XRP, is that there is no company on planet Earth more excited about the growth and development of the XRP ledger because they own nearly 40 billion of these tokens. So people often focus on the idea that this is a centralized network because all these tokens are owned by Ripple. But instead, you have one of the best companies in financial technology buying companies that are already operating in the traditional space and bringing them onto the XRP ledger. You don't find this in any other crypto project. And it's another reason that I'm so bullish on the future of XRP. We're going to get into the next major topic here, which is, what is the timeline for XRP investors? And Sal Gilberti gives a great response here, telling us that the next catalyst, it won't be ETFs. It won't even be the Clarity Act. It will be Ripple receiving a national banking license. Here it is.
Time horizons for a lot of people are quite different. And if you look at just the performances of what we've seen in, the digital asset side of thing, outside of just Bitcoin, you could look at Ethereum, Solana, XRP, etc. These kind of pullbacks are normal and in most cases very healthy as markets correct. But I think a lot of people are trying to figure out, well, I'm in this long term, but I'm trying to understand where, because utility, I still believe utility will be the Trump factor. I mean it as a more analysis of this, the Trump factor of how certain blockchains will do really well. The XRP ledger, we've had several of the guys on that are builders in this ecosystem. I've never been more bullish because I was somewhat skeptical of the XRP ledger in the beginning. I know last year was like, I don't remember, but I think it was like over 300 or 400% growth in terms of active accounts. And they had like 2 million daily transactions. So that has fallen off some. But what is your thought about the ledger? Do you feel like we're going to get a killer app and more devs coming into this ecosystem?
Yes, I think undoubtedly. But I don't think that that's the next impetus for XRP popularity.
Okay.
I think there's no question it's Clarity Act and Ripple's banking finance. Yeah. After that, the build out of the ledger, there's so many ledgers to choose from. So, great. XPRL is great, but that doesn't mean, there are thousands of developers and programmers out there using dozens of different really good ledgers. There are people building their own ledgers, internally. And so there's no way I don't think XPRL is going to dominate in terms of ledger activity, any other ledger. I think it's useful. I think it'll build out, but no question for Ripple, for XRP, the Clarity Act and a banking license, that's what they built the company for. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, you can use the ledger. You can use it for all kinds of things. And real world asset adoption into tokenization, that is going to utilize that ledger a lot. But they're not the only ones. And I think, Brad Garlinghouse is very open in saying as the whole ecosystem grows, the rising tide lifts all boats. Right. So I think people have to be open to that. You could be XRPL centric, but that doesn't serve your purpose very well, I think.
And we've talked about this for several years, Johnny Krypto, and I want to highlight it once again, is that what Ripple is doing is they're playing the long game. Bitcoin was built for the retail investor to get away from the institutions. The XRP ledger was built for the institutions to step into the blockchain space. I think that's what Sal Gilberti highlighted perfectly in that short clip. And when you think about it, people may not want to hear this, but that extends the timeline. 2 years, 3 years of onboarding real-world business products. The speculative bubble that is the crypto asset class is just beginning here in 2025. With the Clarity Act and the Ripple banking license, you are going to see the XRP ledger become supercharged with institutional liquidity, and that's the moment that I'm waiting for.
Yeah, the way I view it is similar to that. Right now, the Clarity Act, to me, will unlock the speculative race, which will eventually turn into a bubble. Because we're not going to have utility. You don't get the Clarity Act tomorrow and then the next day utility starts. It doesn't work that way. We're going to get the Clarity Act. Then there'll be my guess is there'll be a speculative run of money, just like we saw in 97, 98, 99. I don't think it'll be 3 years. Maybe it's 1 or 2. And then you will get the utility that's created later. And then this market becomes a mature, similar to a stock market. So I think we still have one big bull run left before we start becoming more of a commodity type market, the way, not commodity, but common, the way the stock market does, where we see less volatility and less spikes. But I couldn't agree more with Sal. He's so spot on. At the end of the day, they're here to build this thing as a bank, or what they're really doing is building utility themselves because they've been financed so well through the XRP sales that they can go and afford to buy companies to put them on the ledger and build their own ecosystem and build their own adoption. And that's what you're seeing happen. And that's why, Abs, I haven't gotten out of this asset. I'm holding on to it because of that, because of the Ripple and the efforts they're doing, which will put the XRPL at the center of everything they do, which then, of course, as you use that, whether it's XRP or not being used on the XRPL, as you use the XRPL, it burns XRP. You're removing supply every single day from XRP forever, permanently, which means automatically that becomes a deflationary asset as you're burning. So to me, I agree also with you. Crypto has been known as this 4-year, you get it, a 4-year bull run with a big cycle, and then it bull cycle, and then it crashes. Everybody's expecting that. Abs, I think that changes this year in 2026.
That's why I consistently talk about the products I use. ITrust Capital allows our listeners to capitalize on tax-free crypto gains, especially for the 59 and up community, Johnny Krypto. But I think the best part about this is that by tapping in through a Roth IRA, you can get exposure to digital assets. And for somebody like me, who's not going to be touching these funds for 20, 30, 50 years, why not have exposure to the fastest growing asset class in the world? And maybe, God only knows, if Bitcoin is able to survive another 30, 40 years, tax-free, maybe millions and millions of dollars that I'm saving. But I want to remind our listeners once again, Brad Garlinghouse has said it several times. Ripple is fully committed to the success of XRP, and everybody who thinks otherwise should listen to this video.
Well, XRP, and I sometimes have to remind the world of this, but XRP is at the heart and soul of what Ripple is doing. We care deeply. We have called it our North Star. But at the end of the day, we want to do things that are good for the XRP ecosystem. We want to build trust in XRP. We want to build utility in XRP. And we want to build liquidity in XRP. And each of the acquisitions we do, in one way or another, we believe it will do those things. Now, it may not be, some people may look at it and be like, I don't really, scratch their head a little bit. Well, I promise you that we see in the three-dimensional game of chess, we see how we believe that's going to evolve. Sometimes we'll probably do things that are more obvious and some less obvious. That's okay with us.
Well, the important part about that clip is that they are going out and acquiring real-world companies with the XRP ledger in mind, driving more institutional liquidity and volume onto the ledger. Given a long enough period of time, it's a very simple equation of supply and demand. And with more demand stepping in with the same amount of supply for XRP, we could see dramatically higher price targets. And there's one other narrative we have to factor in here. That is our friend Jake CLAVER, who said, if we get the perfect case scenario, we may be going far higher than any XRP listeners anticipate. Here's the answer. Is it a make or break situation from a OTC standpoint? Because we know there's about 30 billion. If you include the OTC desk, $30 billion in value. Now, to some people, it sounds like a huge number. To those in the know like yourself, it's a small number. And so with these ETFs, with the Clarity Act, with this event that you're talking about, what does it mean for the XRP price? Why do you get to the arbitrary number of 3 digits or 4 digits? How do you get to these numbers?
Demand, Right. So it's just a math equation. If you weren't going to settle the back into the stock market, you would need enough liquidity to be able to do that. And I believe that's where they're going to push it to in order to be able to facilitate that. So that's $5 or $6 trillion a day in settlement. You're also going to have the FX market slammed in Japan, which SBI is a large contributor there. And we know that they're a fan of Ripple and R3 and XRP. Yoshitaka Kitao has touted XRP multiple times as his favorite asset. So if you needed a liquidity buffer for the FX market, for all of those transfers swapping back to yen, that's another demand point that they're going to be utilizing the asset for. You've got all these ETFs launching at the same time. We've already seen the largest inflows that we've ever seen on ETFs for spot products in crypto. The first 4 or 5 days here that we've had, just a couple ETFs for XRP open and trading. That's already eating into the OTC desk. Okay. Now there's OTC and dark pools. So that's going to be people's argument. Well, we haven't seen the price move. It's actually going down. Well, you were correct, because they're buying over the counter and they're buying out of the dark pools. But once those are depleted, they will have to go to the exchanges. And if there's implications for Tether and Bitcoin at the same time, and the exchanges need XRP, you have the Shane Ellis theory also play out at the same time, where they start using XRP in that capacity. So that everybody needs it all at the exact same time, and there's not enough to go around. And that's the situation where we see a huge move up in price that people just, I don't think they're ready for.
And Johnny, we've said it time and time again that oftentimes when XRP starts moving up, it goes far higher than people anticipate. Now, it also works in the opposite direction. When this asset starts to go down, it may go down further than people anticipate. But one thing is absolutely clear. We are at an inflection point for the catalyst that we've been discussing for several years. Whether it's the ETF, the Clarity Act, or any other major catalyst that many of our listeners are aware of, all of this is happening here in 2025, heading into 2026. And with the liquidity crisis that we're experiencing, as across the board, this market is being destroyed. I think that the bearish sentiment is out of control from a macro standpoint. As you heard Sal Gilberti reference, projects like XRP are still up 200-300% from just 13 months ago. But Johnny, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so when you look at the markets right now, they're being squeezed. The liquidity crunch in a sense, and so it's very normal to expect markets to pull back a bit. And that, we're seeing that right now, right? What we learned is, look, we have all these new ETFs launching, but we don't see the XRP price going up, right? Even though some supplies go. Why? Well, because at the end of the day, it always comes down to how much money is in the pool. And right now, there's just a smaller money. The way to think about it is there's just small money in the pool right now. But guess what that means? When there's small money now and prices drop, the smart money is buying those positions up because they know there's a bigger pool of liquidity coming soon. And we know from Raoul Paul that there'll be a new liquidity cycle coming in, debt recycle next year. So it doesn't surprise me that you're seeing prices pull back now, typically does in December in the stock market. People are going to be buying that up, and then we're going to get a nice big bull run going into next year. And so, I encourage everybody. This is why I tell everybody, Abs, you got to have a profit plan going into this. So I know people are hurting right now. And you know what I've heard people say to me? Johnny, I should have sold some. I'm like, yeah, I know you should have. And that's why we invented Merlin to do that. But I'm happy to give a new announcement, Abs. We just launched, Uphold we have a big community of Uphold users, and we just launched a new update in Merlin. So right now, we've made the connector much easier. You simply it's OAuth. You simply use your username and password, and boom, you log in and it brings all your coins in. And again, with Merlin, remember, guys, we don't have your keys or your coins. We just bring in the data read only so you can see what's going on. You can build an exit plan, have everything at your fingertips right there for you. You can build your exit plan and get the alerts so that you could sell when it's high and buy when it's low. And that's how you make money. And then what do you do when you take those profits? Make sure you're doing it like I do through a Roth ITrust Capital IRA, and you can then never have to pay taxes on any of that. So guys, the links are below for both the app, Merlin, and for iTrust Capital. Don't wait. Now's a great time while the prices are low. Get your tools set up, put yourself in the best position to win like me and Abs are doing.
If you enjoyed this content, smash that like button, leave your 2025 peak XRP price prediction underneath the video, and we'll see you all in the next one.
Good night.